Oscars happening this past weekend, it's got me thinking about something that always happens after award season. The discourse immediately shifts naturally from who should have won to who shouldn't have. And there's always that lingering question of what if? What if in 2019 Toni Collette got nominated for Hereditary? What if in 2023 Angela Bassett or Stephanie Hsu had won Best Supporting Actress over Jamie Lee Curtis? What if Amy Adams had just won any of the million times she's been nominated? What if Will Smith had never slapped Chris Rock? A lot of questions, but the most important one being, what if in 2020 J-Lo had been nominated for Best Supporting Actress for Hustlers? Hustlers was, can I say it? I'm gonna say it, a cultural phenomenon. It came out in September 2019 to honestly pretty great reviews. Most critics praised the energy, the visual style, the flash, the fun, and especially the performances, specifically Jennifer Lopez. The movie was also praised for its themes of female empowerment, but unlike some movies that say they're about empowerment, this one actually does the legwork to earn that title. So the question remains, why wasn't J-Lo nominated? Well, there were a few factors. First, there's the issue of perception. For a lot of Oscar voters, J-Lo just still exists more as a celebrity than as an actress. And second, a lot of people simply didn't view Hustlers as an Oscar-worthy movie. Guys, a movie about a sex worker navigating exploitation and trying to take control of her own destiny is definitely not Oscar-worthy. But seriously, it does feel like this movie just wasn't taken that seriously by industry voters. J-Lo's performance, however, absolutely was. I mean, for starters, she really was incredible in this role. She even got nominated for nearly 60 awards for this role alone, including Golden Globes, SAG, and Critics' Choice Awards, all of which are considered major Oscar precursors. But what an actor usually also needs is a movie that the industry respects overall. And Hustlers just wasn't getting that kind of recognition. It wasn't showing up in Best Picture conversations, Best Comedy, or even broader nominations. It even missed nominations in categories where it realistically could have appeared in, like Best Comedy at the Golden Globes. So, J-Lo ended up as a lone contender carrying the film's awards campaign. And when you're the only possible nomination for your movie, that makes the road to an Oscar much harder. So the real question becomes, why wasn't this movie taken as seriously by the industry? Let's dive in. Okay, can I just say it's kind of crazy of me going from making a video about Victorious to one about Hustlers? Anyways, I call that range. Okay, diving into this movie, Hustlers takes place over the span of about 8 years. We start in 2007 with Constance Wu, who plays our lead, Destiny, getting ready to start her shift at what some may call a midnight dancer, also known as a stripper. Destiny is struggling to find her footing in this world, feeling insecure and unsure of herself. And then she meets Ramona, and Ramona is everything. She's confident, she's magnetic, she's powerful, she's the baddest bitch in the room and she absolutely knows it. She takes Destiny under her wing and the two form a close, deep bond. Mentor, friend, and eventually something that feels closer to family. Yes, there are many glamorous nights. The Usher scene in particular really stands out. But the film never fully glamorizes this life because we also see the other side. The creeps you have to deal with, the men who try to take advantage of you, the ones who think they can degrade or insult you just because they're paying. But for these women, it's a job, a necessity. They're providers and this is how they survive. Director Lorene Scafaria actually talked about this in the film's commentary. She described it as that yes, it's fast money, but it's not easy money. But our girls, they are making money, they're living big, and then boom, 2008 happens. The financial crisis hits, and at the same time, Destiny discovers she's pregnant. Destiny leaves the club to raise her child, and she and Ramona go their separate ways. Both of them attempt to go legit, trying to find more traditional, socially acceptable jobs. But Destiny runs into a brutal catch-22 where she can't get retail experience without retail experience. And nobody will hire her to get that experience in the first place. So she has no choice but to return to the club. But the club world has completely changed. Many don't have the money to blow like they used to. The clientele that are still there are nastier, the girls are being taken advantage of, and the old rules are out the window. Everything feels helpless until Destiny runs into Ramona again. Ramona, who's also a mother as well, is trying to make ends meet with a regular job at Old Navy. But the job doesn't pay enough and doesn't give her the flexibility she needs to take care of her child. So, Ramona comes up with a new plan. She, Destiny, along with Annabelle and Mercedes, start fishing. They target wealthy Wall Street guys, get them drunk, bring them to the club, and run up huge tabs on their credit cards, splitting the profits with the club. At first, it works, but fishing has risks. They're relying on strangers and the money isn't guaranteed. So, eventually, they escalate things and start drugging the men. Now, obviously, we are not supposed to root for this. But the film complicates it by pointing out who these men really are. They are specifically targeting the wealthy financial guys, many of whom directly benefited from the same system that caused millions of people to lose their homes and jobs after the '08 crash. It doesn't justify what the women are doing, but it does make things a little murkier. For a while, their scheme works. We see the money come back, the lifestyle returns, but eventually greed starts creeping in, especially for Ramona. She begins recruiting more girls, expanding this operation, and bringing in people who aren't as careful or trustworthy. And of course, everything starts falling apart. Stuff becomes sloppy, the risks increase, and eventually the law catches up with them, and our 4 main women are arrested. So we watch them rise to the top, we watch them crash at the bottom, we watch them climb their way back up again, only for it to all collapse. So when we look at this story, we start to realize something. Hustlers is actually a film about control. And the movie literally tells us that in the first minute with Janet Jackson's Control playing.
This is a story about control.
Control over your body, control over your money, control over your life. At the beginning of the movie, the dancers seem to have that control. You even see it in how the movie frames them visually. The women are often filmed in ways that make them feel larger and more powerful, while the men are frequently shot from above, making them feel smaller. But the movie also makes it clear that this control is fragile because the system they're operating in was never really built for them in the first place. When the crash happens, the strip clubs lose clientele and the girls try to leave the industry, but they literally can't. Destiny tries to get a normal job, but she doesn't have the qualifications. She doesn't even have a GED. So she has to go back because she has a daughter that she has to feed at the end of the day. So it's back to the club, back to the harassment, back to the low pay, back to a system where she's no longer in control. So the women decide to take that control back for themselves. Now again, let me be clear. What they do is not good. Do not drug people. But again, it's a kind of complicated slightly because of who these guys are. Like, some of them really just are awful. Like the guy who tricks Destiny by giving her 3 $20 bills instead of 300, and also the guy earlier who called Destiny Lucy Lou. These guys are also really handsy and rude and brash and disrespectful. Again, not excusing it. And the film doesn't frame these women as heroes either. I mean, that's kind of where the journalist character comes in. The journalist, played by Julia Stiles, is basically the audience stand-in. You see her react to Destiny's story with skepticism, with judgment, with confusion, because that's probably what the audience is feeling too, like, wait, you did what with what? But there's also some sympathy there. One of the most important ideas in the film comes from Ramona's line, "This whole country is a strip club." Yes, like what Ramona said, there are people throwing the money and there's people doing the dance. But there's another part to that. Everyone is selling something. The dancers are selling fantasy and intimacy and attention. The Wall Street guys are selling financial schemes. Even the journalist in present-day timeline is essentially selling the women's story. The movie suggests that the difference isn't whether people are selling something, but who society decides to judge for it. Women who use their bodies are stigmatized, but the men who exploit financial systems are often rewarded. So with all of that in mind, why didn't the Academy take this movie seriously? And the simplest answer might be the most obvious one. Because at face value, it's a stripper movie. The Academy, much like society, has historically been uncomfortable with stories about sex work, especially when those stories don't frame sex workers purely as victims. Hustlers does something different. It treats these women as complex people, and sometimes they do bad things. Destiny is supporting her grandmother and her daughter. Ramona is trying to give her daughter a better life. Mercedes is trying to pay for a lawyer for her boyfriend and pay rent. Annabelle is young, broke, and alone after her family disowned her. But they all also drug people. And that complexity is exactly what makes the movie interesting. Now, years later, we are seeing films about sex workers receive major recognition. Again, I haven't seen Anora, so I'm not going to get into that discourse or compare the two. But it does make me wonder, if Hustlers had come out just a few years later, would the conversation around it have been different? Would Jennifer Lopez had gotten that nomination? Because at the end of the day, Hustlers isn't really a movie about strippers. It's a movie about power, about what happens when people who were never given control over their lives try to take it back. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they go too far, and sometimes the system pushes back harder than they expected. But the reason the movie works, and the reason J-Lo's performance works, is because Ramona represents something bigger than just, a flashy supporting magnetic character. She represents the illusion of control. Like, she's confident, she's magnetic, she's powerful, but she's also just another person trying to survive in a system that was never built for her. And maybe that's why the movie resonated with many people. Because that's real life. You gotta do what you gotta do to stay afloat if you're stuck in a system that constantly reminds you you're disposable. You gotta hustle. But please, do not drug anyone.
But everybody's hustling. This city, this whole country, is a strip club. You got people tossing the money and people doing the dance.